Is Riot running out of good ideas for Valorant? It's possible. You see, over the past couple of years, Riot has added into the game some things that we didn't ever know if they would be added into the game. Things like the Outlaw, which was the first ever new gun brought into the game since the very start of the game. And the Outlaw is a mid-tier sniper rifle that I think, given a year's time, a year has passed now, I think most people would probably say, yeah, this is a pretty good addition to the game overall, and it fulfills its role pretty well. This year, Riot has decided to add in regen shields. And the regen shield is basically what it says it is. It is a shield that if you lose it, it will regenerate over a bit of time. And it costs a little bit more than light shields and a little bit less than heavy shields. But the real question is this a good addition to the game? Is it ever really worth buying? Well, the regen shield has been with us for a little bit of time now, and we've had a couple of top tier pro games to see, are the pros ever using it? And if so, are they getting good value from it? So I decided to take a look at this game here between NRG and Gen.G in the SOUP Valorant League Grand Final. This is two S-tier teams to most people playing it out. And so I thought, okay, are the very top level S-tier teams actually using and getting good value from the regen shield? Well, let's get the first question out of the way. Do the pros ever actually buy the regen shield? Well, in this game between NRG and Gen.G, there was 58 rounds. Now, in theory, all 10 players could probably buy regen shields every single round if they wanted to. Of course, they wouldn't actually ever really do that because, of course, there are eco rounds where you're not really going to buy anything. So, of course, they aren't actually ever going to do that. But in theory, there are 580 possibilities for these pro players to buy regen shields in this game. And how many did the pros go for, as far as I could tell? And it is possible that I missed one or two because it's not perfect on the UI either to fully tell who's buying them. But I found 13 out of a possible 580 regen shields bought. So 13 isn't a lot. And there was a lot more full shield and light shield buys than there were regen shields for sure. But let's take a look at some of those 13 and take a look at some of the examples of where regen shields might give you some value and where they might not. The first problem that you might encounter with having regen shields is, of course, that your maximum health is still just the same as if you bought light shields. So you're spending a bit of extra money for essentially the same overall max health. And the problem is, particularly at the top level, in a lot of the rounds, you might just end up dying like Foxy does in these.
เข้า4 นาทีครับคือจอยแมปเว่นเนี่ยมันคุมได้ทั้ง4และกาลาดเลยไงเขาเลยฮิตพอสมควรเพราะว่าการเล่นเนี่ยมันเล่นง่ายครับแต่คือ49ดันมาแบบนี้เจอกับ FNA ตรงนี้นี่ดูความละเอียดของ NG บ้างครับว่าจะละเอียดแค่ไหนครับในการเล่นคือถ้าทำมาแผนอย่างดีแต่ถ้าตัวนี้ไม่ละเอียดนี่มีปัญหาเหมือนกันโอ้โหไม่พลาดครับมาได้
Yeah, sometimes you're just gonna get your head taken off. And it doesn't matter what shields you have, to be honest, because you're just going to die straight away. And so essentially you spend a bit of extra money for really no value. But that isn't really fair, because then you could just make this argument of, well, why would you ever buy full shields then? Really, in reality, if you're so worried about just dying to a headshot all the time, really you should buy no shields, which of course most people don't agree with. So really what it's about is kind of hedging your bets of, well, if I take a bunch of, body shots or get a bit of damage, will I survive? That's really what the value is about, not just when you die from a headshot and would die anyway. Now let's take a look at some examples where we actually start to see some of the advantages of playing with the regen shields, and we actually get to see the regen shield be used and regen, right? Let's take a look first off at this one here on round 4 on Abyss, and what we're really looking at here is Yeoman, because he's the one who has the regen shield here, okay? And he, in just a second, is going to take this fight with FNS, and he's going to win this fight with FNS, but he takes some damage. He takes some damage, and so he's down on 92 HP here. And so what that means is, you're going to see in just a second, though, oh, it starts coming back up. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. They're going up, right? And so he ends up in this position here. The round ends, and he ends up with his full shields here on, 25 here, with 92 HP left. But let's just think that this round didn't end for a second, and let's talk about those differentials, because this is the second problem with the regen shields, that if we take a look at these numbers here add up to 117. But 117 is not a good number in Valorant, okay? Because 117, a Vandal body shot does 40 damage. And so you are still dead to 3 body shots here on 117. Okay, so you're on 117 health over here, but essentially if you were on 92, it would be the same. Right, you would also be dead to 3 body shots. Either way. Now, I know that some of you will say, well, okay, yeah, sure, but, you could get damage through, through things, right, which will deal slightly less, or you could get leg shots, but you have to ask the question, how often, how likely is that to be the case? It will happen sometimes, but I would say it is fairly unlikely. And for the most part here, when you're looking at these kind of numbers, really we haven't gained that much. And let's take a look at another example from Munchkin here on Ascent. He does have the regen shield, you can see here just at the bottom. And in a second, he's just going to swing some here, but he's going to go down to 54 HP. And the thing is about 54 is it's a terrible number for these regen shields, because eventually, once he gets back up to 25 like he does now, if we add up his health, he's on 79. Now 79, unfortunately for him, the cutoff for Vandal body shots is 80. Now, you could argue that this is a cutoff for Phantom body shots, and so in that sense, he has gained something, but he's still 2 Vandal body shots, and you don't choose what guns your opponents pick, and most of them will pick a Vandal. So, you know, he is still, unfortunately for him, underneath that threshold. And again, if we skipped ahead later in this round, he does just die, and the regen shields don't matter. So when you're playing against those better guns, regen shields maybe aren't the best. But what about in rounds like this one, round number 2, where your opponent only has pistols, right? Well, we did see often quite a few buys in these kind of rounds. This is when they often came, was kind of early in a half here, like Verno does in this second round. And these are the kind of rounds when you're up against these kind of guns that you will actually start to see a bit of a differential, because that 25 extra health, you know, if a classic is only dealing 26 damage, your chances of it being on the right side of a cutoff is extremely good. So against those weaker buys, weaker purchases from your opponents, that's where regen shields is much more likely to find decent value. But I did also, if we go back to the round that we first showed here with Yeoman, I did also kind of leave out one important point that I'm sure some of you will have noticed, which is of course that when Yeoman gets back these shields and he ends up at this point, the difference here is he, for the next round, doesn't need to rebuy those shields, right? If this was light shields, he would have lost them. He would have to buy again, right? Which would be 400 that he's bought them in this round if he bought light shields, and he'd have to buy them again, which is another 400 at least, right? Well, that's 800. That is more than just buying one regen shield and having it regen and survive, right? So in this sense, he's actually saved money and still has a bit of regen shield in the back as well, and he saved money over buying double light shields. And so in that sense, is it worth it then if this is going to play out enough to where you're actually saving money in the long term? Well, again, my answer is probably not. And the reason for this is this, right? In this situation, like we see Yeoman here, Genji have won the round, right? And when you are winning rounds, your economy is probably going to be in a decent enough spot. A decent enough spot to where the money difference probably didn't matter that much. So really, we're more concerned with when you are losing rounds. But normally when you're losing rounds, you're dying, and so have to buy the shields no matter what. So really, we're only concerned with losing rounds, but when you save. Well, actually, we're talking about regen shields here, which is actually a bit different, because it's not just about when you lose and save. Because if you lose and save and you're on the complete opposite side of the map, like let's say you're Karen here, and you just don't take part in the round and you just go and save, right? Well, the regen shield didn't matter, right? Because if this was light shields, it would also be the same of you would just get out and save, right? So really what we're looking for is when you lose a round, you save, but you also take damage and the regen shield actually gets to take effect. Now, how often does that happen? Well, probably not that often, but weirdly enough, it did happen during this game. It happened here in round number 7 of Abyss, where Yeoman, again, who has the regen shield down here, as you can see, he actually will take some damage here in just a second and then go and save his gun. So this, I think, is a good example of one of the rare cases where he will take the damage, he will get the regen. So there you go, there's the damage. You're going to see his shield starts to come back up now. Now he's just going to go and save. Now they just go and retreat. He just ends up, you know, coming across here and saving the shield. So we did actually get perhaps one of the rare examples of where the regen shield is actually coming into effect and saving him money. So at this point, you probably don't have the highest opinion of a regen shield. But there are some times that I do think a regen shield is actually quite good. And I mentioned against, you know, low eco rounds, you know, that it's probably going to be a decent option. Well, what if you went for the lowest eco round of all? The pistol round, because that is what NRG did at the start of map 3, where Verno here, it says 25, but this is a regen shield, and he has a sheriff. So what's happened here is Ethan has bought him a sheriff, and he has a sheriff, and he's been able to buy a shock dart, and he's bought the regen shield with his 650 credits. And on this kind of round, the regen shield often will find some value.
ยาร์ดและฝั่งนี้ด้านหน้าเอช็อตเหมือนจะเจอตัวมาแล้วตัดหนึ่งได้ก่อนแบบไวๆครับเคลียร์ทางของฟ็อกซี่ไนท์ไปตามเทรดมาเวอร์โน่นี่ฮะเชอร์ลีฟจะโชว์หรือเปล่าแต่โดนเบรกเอาไว้ก่อนเนี่ยจากมัสกิน
เวอร์โน่ครับตอนนี้โดนเบรกก็จิตวัสได้มา2คิวก่อนเลยครับโอ้แล้วแกซื้อลิเจนชิลด้วยนะไม่ได้แค่ก่อนเล็กธรรมดานะนั่นโอ้เวอร์โน่ครับเดือดจัดเลย
ปั้น
มาเลย
ใช่เพราะว่าตัวทางของมาด้าเนี่ยคือปล่อยไปเล่นเหลือจังหวะแรกนะฮะตัดหนึ่งได้คือเคลียร์ถือว่ามิชชั่นคอมพลีทแล้วในพิโซราวแบบนี้แต่นี่ฮะน่าสนใจ4 ต่อ 2ในสถานการณ์แบบนี้ฮะมาสกินต่อชีวิตรอดให้ได้เจ็บหนักเหมือนกันนะฮะและเทคเจอร์รอเป้าอยู่ด้านหน้าจังหวะตะพีกมาได้แค่หนึ่งแล้วโดนเทรดคืนแบบไวๆจากทางอีธาน
มันกินเหลือคนเดียวครับเลือดเหลือ4เท่านั้นด้วยครับช็อตนี้บนล่างมี2ตำแหน่งรอครอสอยู่
So in this clip then we see that Verno is taking all this damage from different perspectives, but eventually he's going to end up getting the shields back, right? So we see he gets that kill there, and now he's going to fully get the shield back, right? So it's going to start coming back, and he's going to end up here with 37 health and 25 shields, and overall this is 62. Right, so he's on 62 health. Well, this is where this really matters, right? Because on a pistol round, what are you likely to face? Well, a ghost body shot deals 30 damage. Well, being on 62 is good, right? A classic body shot deals 26 damage. Well, the difference between 37 and 62, yeah, that's going to make a difference. That's going to be an extra body shot that we can survive. So that's good. A sheriff body shot deals 55. Well, the difference from 37 to 62, oh, that also matters, right? So basically, pretty much any pistol that you're going to come up against, it's going to be a difference. You are going to get an extra point of health than you otherwise wouldn't have done versus those guns. So you can see on a pistol round, it really often will make a difference. However, the true skeptics out there may have noticed that in this particular round, did it really matter? Because Verno will take an extra bit of damage here from Munchkin at the end of this round just here. But on 37 HP, he would have lived one ghost shot anyway to the body, which is what happens to him. So in essence, did it really matter? You'll see that he does go down here to 32 HP. So he does take one extra body shot there. But he would have survived anyway. So that really is the question. Yes, okay, theoretically, on a pistol round, regen shields could have a lot of value. But was there any point in these 3 games ever that the regen shield actually made a difference? Not just theoretically could make a difference, but did actually save someone? Well, the answer is yes. And unbelievably, it happened in the very last round of the very last map.
ใน SVL 2024
มาได้ครับเดินต่อเลยโจมานรอสปามอยู่แล้วครับรูดยาวไปโอ้โหเอ็มเจ็บหนักเลยครับแต่โยมานก็สวนกลับโดนสวนกลับมาเจ็บหนักเหมือนกันนะ
เจ็บกว่าด้วยครับโยมานเอาเนี่ยมาเริ่มกันที่ด้านหน้าบีเมนเองแล้วจังหวะจะทะลุเข้ามาครับมาได้ก็เจ็บเหมือนกันก็16 HP แต่ยิงกันไม่ตายแค่จังหวะไล่มาเฟนเข้ามาแพ็กกันรอกันไว้แล้วตัดตัวแรกหยอกของสไตล์ไปได้ก่อนก็โดนสวนขึ้นกลับมาจากเท็กเจอร์ได้มาได้และโอดินลากมาอีทาน
แบบนี้ก็น่าจะเรียบร้อยหรือเปล่าเลยครับแบบนี้ครับผู้ชมมันกินล็อกรอไว้ก่อนแล้วการอนกระโดดข้ามมาสแนปต่ออีธานเก็บการอนไปเหลือคนเดียวแล้วคือโยแมนครับนี่คือแชมเปี้ยนชิพพอยต์ของทาง NRG ครับไปแบบนิ่งๆนี้เลยนะ
แล้วดูฮะ1 ต่อ 3กับการว่าโยแมนเองเลือกที่จะเดินหาเป้าหรือพลิกมาจังหวะ
Did you see it? Probably not, because it happened pretty quickly. But we saw at the start that Yeoman gets, damage down to 18 HP. And this is like a good number for us, right? Because this, 40 is our kind of magic number here. Well, look, we're on 43. Well, that means that we can survive. We can potentially survive something. And that is what happens in this round. Because just ever so quickly, just ever so briefly here, this bullet here from FNS does hit Yeoman. He goes down to 13 HP, but he's gonna live. Right, he's gonna live. The boy who lived here, who may not otherwise on 18 HP, have lived. Right, so we finally, in the final round of this game, got one example of where the regen shield did actually matter. I mean, they still lost the round and lost the game 3-0. But hey, he survived that shot. He got a shock dart kill afterwards, so that's good, right?